The MENA Talks, a podcast series by the BIC on the Middle East and North Africa. Once a month, our hosts, along with special guests, will explore underlying historical, economic, social and political drivers behind today's systemic issues in the MENA region. The BIC is present on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. Follow us and subscribe to receive our latest news and publications.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the MENA Talks. My name is Ben Lowings. I am a political analyst at the Brussels International Centre. And today I'm pleased to welcome Lorenzo Marinone. Lorenzo is a researcher at the European Foundation for Democracy. And welcome to our podcast here.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. So today we will be discussing about the recent developments in Libya. Now, following a ceasefire last year, the UN-led process called the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum has resulted, finally, in the election of a new prime minister. Abdul Hamid Dbeibah has been elected the new interim prime minister of the transitional government, the Government of National Unity. So I guess we can start with our discussion here. Lorenzo, maybe we can start by exploring what happened in this process.
Yes, the political dialogue was one of the most important achievements in the last years as far as Libyan crisis is concerned. We have had some 18 months of hot war with warring parties in the east and in the west, with the East armies sieging the capital city, Tripoli. And so reversing the trend was really an achievement that was due to a number of factors. One is the UN, Ghassan Salamé, former special envoy for Libya, and the deputy and then acting envoy Stephanie Williams have done, I think, an outstanding job in appeasing the parties and trying to pull all the strings at the right time. And it was a very difficult task, but still, this is it. Then there's another factor, very important, that is, it's external, it's outside Libya, and it is the international community and all the countries that are in different ways involved in the conflict and in the crisis. So, of course, I'm speaking of regional countries from the region, so neighboring countries, but mostly other Arab countries in the Gulf, and of course, also other actors in the wider Mediterranean basin, like Turkey, and of course, European countries, France, Italy, and UK. And of course, I have named so many countries over the last minute, and you can understand simply by the list of countries that have some interest in the conflict, in the crisis, that it's very difficult to have all of them even to agree on one single point. Well, at this point, the political dialogue has succeeded in, at least for the moment being, stopping the spoilers. For the moment being, this is not an achievement graved in stone, of course. It's neither it is written on paper. So it's just a gentleman's agreement, or what is the most convenient thing to do for the moment for these parties.
Yeah, that sounds that's a very good way of summarizing, I guess, to begin with, because there are so many people vested in this conflict. But then that brings me to a point about the election itself. Frankly, Dbeibah was something of a shock to the international community. I believe many countries and many internal players had been expecting the election of Aguila Saleh and Fatih Bashagha instead. And I've seen some reports that suggest that this is some sign of weakness of the new administration. What do you think about this?
Well, the political dialogue was basically some 70 members issued from the various parts of Libya, so from all the three main historical regions of Libya, put together in a room to decide to elect the new government of national unity and the most important political seats. There were four lists, and the UN-led process tried to ensure that this process was not just simply replicating the internal division and the historical division of Libya. How? This list had 4 members each, and these 4 members were required to come from different regions. So all the regions must be represented. This was the UN-led process, basically. So yes, it was a bit of a shock because the list that you mentioned, the Aguila Saleh and Fatih Bashaga list, was the most, let's say, the most quoted because Aguila Saleh was a very influential, very important, maybe not that influential in Cyrenaica, in the east of the country. He still is the president of the House of Representatives, so the parliament in the east. And over the last 2 years, he has been increasingly seen as an alternative to Khalifa Haftar, so the general that led the attack on Tripoli in 2019. Aguila Saleh is, let's say, also a point of balance in the interest of many tribes, many influential tribes in the East. So he is influential in that sense. So Aguila Saleh was the man that could bring Cyrenaica, or most of Cyrenaica, to the negotiating table and bring it towards a real pacification of the country. From the other side, you had Fatih Bashaga. Fatih Bashaga is a very controversial figure. And even more so, over the last few weeks, we have had many issues with Bashaga in Tripoli. Bashaga was the Minister of Interior in the Sarraj-led government of national accord in Tripoli. He was the minister during the war, after, and he was one of the most fierce opponents of Haftar. But on the other side, he was also, he is a very clever man, I think. He was liaising back in 2011 with NATO commands. He was in with the rebels, of course, anti-Gaddafi. And he has tried, since he was elected Minister of Interior, he tried to build many relationships with foreign actors. So yes, he is always been seen as Turkey's man. Many in the East think that he is affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood, or at least it represents the Brotherhood's interests. But at the same time, Bashaga has also paid a visit in Paris. And so he has tried to diversify his connection, and as far as I can see, successfully. So Bashaga and Saleh, they were the couple that many capitals, many foreign players were betting on in order to move forward and leave the war as a thing of the past. Still, this was a shock because the Dbeibah and the Menfi and the Lafi and Musalkoni list, so they were the 4 of the other list, they won. Why? Why this happened? There are many factors here at play, but one of these is for sure that the Bashaga Saleh list was also seen by Libyans as a thing of the past. They are, Aguila Saleh is he's old, he's an old man. Bashaga is not new, politically speaking. And so they are so much intertwined with the last years of Libyan crisis that they were not seen as the best choice, maybe to move forward. Dbeibah, the Dbeibah list, I think, was seen as the lesser of the evils. And then you have, of course, many other factors in this.
So I'll just pick up on this. With the apparent failure of Bashaga and Aguila Saleh, do you believe then that this has given a space for, let's say, extra political actors? I mean, Khalifa Haftar, as you mentioned, and other interest groups that are not part of the political system as such. Do you think it gives them a space to return because of this new dynamic in this government of national unity?
Well, it doesn't matter which list wins. This is Libya, so we knew in advance for sure that there would have been spoilers. You have no win-win situation in Libya as for now. So you will, all the actors, all the players, Libyan players, I'm speaking, have to give up on something if they want to really achieve something like a reunification from the institutional and social and economic point of view. So for this very reason, the moment someone wins is the very moment where someone else is losing something. And they do not want, they are not at that point yet. Even more so if you consider foreign players. So there are countries that have spent so many resources, so many political capital in Libya over the last years that you cannot simply imagine that they are accepting that their candidate or the ones they are more close to will just be put aside and not be in power somehow. So yes, from one side, we can say that the Dbeibah list is one that can smooth this passage because it's not made up of so many controversial figures like the Aguila Saleh and Fatih Bashaga list. So this is a positive factor. On the other hand, we are already seeing that Haftar is trying to move a step forward and try to position it himself or his sons or people close to him for the next step. So in the military track, in the political track, for the constitution, of course. So this is something that we are already seeing. Of course, this is not, let's say, the Dbeibah list has just begun, and we have yet to see to what extent they will be prone to compromise with all the other actors.
Right, and it is interesting, this international dimension with this new government. But then again, the government itself has not escaped controversy already. Already the UN experts have supposedly a report on allegations of bribery in the nominations of Dbeibah in the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, to which the Prime Minister's new administration has demanded they publish their report. And they said, we will not allow anyone linked to corruption to take up a position of responsibility, and that they vowed to bring together Libyans and reunify institutions. But I guess then this is a preliminary, well, it's a problem to begin with. It's something that will it always be a thorn in the side for the legitimacy claims of this organization? I mean, after all, this new government was not elected by the people either. So what do you think about this?
Well, I think that the very core factor of the Libyan crisis is not, strictly speaking, political, but it's a matter of legitimacy. So you can have elections. You can have institutional reunification. You can have the Central Bank of Libya reunification, the eastern and western branches. And still, it is not, these are not steps that will bring you to a real pacification. And you cannot simply say that the crisis is over just because you have had elections. The problem is with legitimacy, and legitimacy is a very scarce resource in Libya and also elsewhere. So you have some, let's say the formal side of legitimacy is of course an issue at stake here in this very moment in Libya, because yes, you have some officials elected by this entity, the Libyan political dialogue, so 75 people chosen by the UN. Then they have been elected, but they have not yet been confirmed. By whom? By the parliaments, plural. But you still have a problem of legitimacy with those very parliaments, because their terms has already expired a lot of time ago. And in the very end, you have a problem with a formal problem of legitimacy, because with election that are scheduled for next December, because you don't have a constitution, you don't have, we should have presidential election, but we don't have even a framework for it. So everything is still not clear, is still in the process of being created from scratch. And then there's the informal side of legitimacy. So you have you cannot just imagine that you can erase all the past 10 years of Libyan history. You have so many fractions in the social tissue. You have so many problems and rivalries, even at the local level. So it's not just election that can solve all this problem. And the more you play the card, the national card, and the more you risk forgetting that there's also a regional and a local level that must be taken into account. So giving the voice to the people and giving the Libyans the chance to choose who to elect, who to rule the country, is one thing that is not itself the solution.
Right, and I'm pleased you framed Libya's problems in this regard in the past 10 years, because often commentators have shortened this amount of time. But we must remember that Libya has been electing transitional governments since the fall of Gaddafi in 2011. It's a bit complicated for us as analysts to look at this new process and be optimistic, I suppose. Why should we really assume that this government, this new transitional government, this new prime minister, this new election deadline in December will finally be the one to solve all of Libya's problems? I mean, we must be realistic. We will assume that this won't be completely smooth sailing. But then again, to try and be positive and constructive, what can the international community do? I mean, the United Nations has finally, the new special envoy for the United Nations, Jan Kubiš, has finally taken up his post. And of course, that nomination took a very long time after Ghassan Salamé left. As we can see, there's controversies everywhere on all levels for this. But what can we do at the international community? What can the European Union do? What can the United Nations do? What do you think about this?
Well, the first thing is not to downplay what's taking place in Libya. So many times, some even apparently smaller developments in Libya have been not taken into consideration by the UN process or by some of the foreign players in the right way, and then these issues grows and grow and grow and grow and become something that you cannot avoid anymore because they are too big in the end. One example of this is the bribery allegation during the UN-led process and the final stage of the political dialogue. So the rumors has it that the Dbeibah list paid some hundreds of thousands of dollars to some participants of the political dialogue to vote for the list. And this is something that should be looked into very closely. First of all, because, you know, the saying goes as follow the money. Who gave them the money? It's their money. It's the Dbeibah money. The Dbeibah family is rich, okay, but what's the interest behind these alleged bribery, if it has indeed taken place, of course? And in the end, you will see that everything, more or less, sooner or later, will lead you to what foreign actors want to do in Libya, with Libya. And this is the key point that the international community and the UN process should take into account. This is something that has started in earnest to be taken into account with the Berlin conference at the beginning of 2020. Then COVID issues, of course, added a layer of complexity to the situation. But still, it's from the Berlin conference that the basic tenets of the UN process have been laid down, and we have a multi-track process so that in parallel tries to bring forward issues at the military level, at the political level, so institutional political level, and the economic level. And this is something that must be continued, because we have seen some results. Yes, they are small results. We have some tentative agreement on the economic side for the budget reunification, and we have had some progress as far as the central bank is concerned. And of course the NOC, so the National Oil Company, and the revenues from the oil exports. And this is some real progress, of course. We have a standing committee, the 5+5 committee, made up of military from both sides, the East and the West, that it's working. And these are, let's say, pieces of the puzzle where you can see foreign players honestly involved. For example, Egypt with the military committee. For example, this is something that Egypt is very, very likely to follow up if the UN pushes. And then, of course, let me say this. We are European, and we look at this from a European angle. And we have a history where sovereignty and nation state and state building is something very neat, very well defined. It's a concept with borders, with hard borders. So state has hard borders in reality and as a concept. And we are always under this temptation of projecting this very process, which we created historically, into other regions. But Libya is not Italy, is not Belgium, is not the European Union. Or maybe the creation of the European Union as a process that is still ongoing and has lasted for decades is something that is more similar to what we should expect going on in Libya. We cannot think that just the election in December will solve all the problems, and the UN and all the states that are willing to contribute and to support Libyans and Libya in overcoming this crisis should take into account. This is a process that will take years. It will not. Rome has not been made in a day. Of course, Libya neither. This is something that is important even when you look at some reforms like the security sector reform. Maybe we can talk about this later.
Yes, and in maybe another discussion, we could explore more the security sector reform, as that is a huge issue as well. But for now, I would like to just ask you one last question, just a general question. Indeed, do you consider yourself optimistic about what will be happening in Libya in the coming 2 years, maybe 5 years? Or should we approach this a bit cautiously, what's currently happening?
It depends on the time frame. If the time frame is the next 1 or 2 years, well, no, I'm not that optimistic because we are at the very beginning of a process and so many things can go wrong. let me just remind one very important thing about Libya. In Libya now, there's a ceasefire, there's a truce, yes. The ceasefire is more or less holding, but you still have, these are the UN figures, 20,000 mercenaries in the country. You have Syrian mercenaries brought in the country by Turkey and by Russia. You have Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group and other private military companies entrenched, literally entrenched, because they have been digging trenches in the central Libya for months, and they are not going away anytime soon. You have the Emirates in Libya with their military and special forces, even if most of the times we do not talk about the Emirates, but they are there. They are there. They are not just playing the political card. And for this very reason, you have to imagine that a situation like the Libyan crisis must be understood and read against the background of the wider Mediterranean situation. So the moment you have emerging crisis in other parts of the Mediterranean is the moment where the Libyan trajectory can change. And one very simple example is what happened last year with Turkey. So Turkey enlarging the crisis of the Eastern Mediterranean for the gas exploitation and maritime borders, and bringing these not only to the Eastern Mediterranean, also to Central Mediterranean with Libya, with the agreement that they signed with the Tripoli government. So unless you have an agreement, an understanding between the main foreign players that are now entrenched in Libya, you cannot go anywhere. And the EU has a role to play here, of course. Brussels and other European countries do not have the possibility to act like Turkey or Russia or the Gulf countries, of course, military speaking. But still, you have the Iranian mission, which is not enough, but is something that can be, it's the first piece of the puzzle, and you can build on that. You have, of course, the political dialogue that you can improve now that the war is over, and that you will hopefully have a new government, Menfi and Dbeibah. You can have the European diplomats coming back to Libya and trying to sort out things, being directly there and talking to the people and being on the ground and understanding way better what's going on and what the real problems of Libya are.
Well, on that note, I guess, with these facts of caution as well as optimism, I guess, we have to look for the positives in this, no matter how hard that might be every now and then. I will bring this discussion to a close, but thank you very much, Lorenzo, for joining us.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you all for listening, and I hope you join us again soon.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the MENA Talks. Share your thoughts with us on social media with the hashtag MENA Talks, and follow us to receive our latest news and updates. The MENA Talks is a podcast series on the Middle East and North Africa, an initiative of the Brussels International Centre.